Hey everyone, welcome to Perrin. I'm Connor Klopsick, the Director of Brewery Operations here, and welcome to Interactive Brew. Our first time trying to live stream a full brew. Hopefully it goes well. We're really excited. Want a lot of interaction, so I know we're on YouTube and Facebook live streaming. You can get it on our website, and you can ask questions at any time. We have a couple people behind the camera who can help us filter some questions out and ask them to us, but before we get started on the brew deck, I want to kind of show you around the facility. We can do so throughout the day, but we're up here on our malt deck right now, and I'll give you kind of a tour of the malt deck for now. Hopefully you guys can hear me through my mask. Please comment if you cannot, but we are in full production today in every aspect of the brewery, so it will be loud. A lot of random noises and whatnot, but we'll try and talk loud and make sure that you guys can kind of see every aspect of what we do here. So this is kind of just overlooking our brewery real quick. We have our brew deck up there, which we'll be spending a lot of time on today. And the two little water tanks in front of them are for our RO water, which I'll get into a little later. And then we have quite a few tanks here. We have 11 90-barrel tanks, which are these kind of taller, skinnier cones. We have one 30-barrel here and another 3 down the road. And then we have about 12 150-barrel tanks. Just for knowledge, 1 barrel of beer is 31 gallons. So that's kind of what you're looking at from up here. But kind of get turned around and I'll start showing you the malt deck. So this is where we hold all of our specialty malts. We have 2 silos outside. They hold our base 2-row malt, which goes into 99% of the beers that we make here. And then everything else is going into these bags, which is our specialty malt. I mean, we get specialty malt from all over. We get some from Michigan, Wisconsin, and then we get a lot from Europe and whatnot too. So we get them from all over, and they all have different characteristics that we like, different kind of sugar content or starch contents, different flavors, different roasts, different ways that they've been malted and dried and kilned and all that kind of stuff. So it's a lot of different stuff up here, which is a lot of fun to play with. So that's Fireman's from Germany, and I know we got some Brew up here, which is from Wisconsin, but it's kind of from all over, like I said. And then we keep coming down this way. We have our what we call our library. So this is where we keep at least a 6-pack from every beer run that we've ever done for up to about 6 to 8 months. So that if someone, complains and says that, this beer that I'm drinking is not the best, they can tell us when they got it. We can look it up here. We can taste it. We can test it. Make sure that everything is up to code. We have this up here, which is pretty much the worst conditions for beer. There's a lot of light. It gets really hot up here, sometimes into upper 90s, 100 degrees. So it's not good conditions here. And then we have the exact same duplicate library in our cooler, where it's dark and cold, and which are kind of like the best conditions to keep it in. So we have both sides of the scenario, so we can check them both out, make sure that the beer is good up to the shelf life that we say it is. And sometimes people call and say that they had a bad beer, and then we can come back and test both and say, well, you're kind of full of shit because it's tasting good. We're good here. We're all square. So we keep all this up until the shelf life, and then we'll just kind of get rid of it as we need to. And then we're getting over into our water system. So we have a kind of a unique water system here at Perrin, which is really nice to brew with. We have our carbon filters and whatnot, so it strips out a lot of the chlorine and things from the city that go into the water supply. And then we also have our RO water system. So we're using our RO water for everything that we brew. It breaks it down, it tears everything out so that we are brewing with pure H2O. That allows us to do a lot of things. The main thing is consistency. We are brewing with the exact same water every single time for every batch we make. It's really great for us because we are all about quality and consistency. And then the other unique thing is because we're brewing with just this pure H2O, we can build up the water to whatever we want. We can add different salts and acids to mimic any water profile on Earth. So if we want to do a dry Irish stout, we can kind of mimic Dublin, Ireland's water profile. We can do that for any type of style of beer, as we can, find out what the best water profile for that beer is, and we can add the stuff to it to mimic exactly what we want. It allows us to brew very, very traditional beers, and it allows us to get kind of funky and do a lot of experimental stuff. So it's awesome that we have this RO system, and we've had it from day one. So we've been able to brew with that consistency from the time that parents started in 2012 to right now in 2020. We'll keep coming down and around. This is our feed pro. It's just a machine that kind of weighs out the malt from our two silos out front, so that we don't have to sit here and watch it. It'll shut it off exactly when we need to. And then we have our hopper. So all the bag malt that you see has to be thrown by hand. They come in 50 to 55 pound bags, and then we all just bring them over here. We dump them down into the hopper, and that gets pulled up over into our mill. So every specialty malt that goes in has to go through here. And then after they go in full kernels, similar to kind of what this is a caterpillar, so this is kind of what it looks like before it's crushed up. And then it comes over into the mill. And we have two sets of rollers in the mill. So we have this upper set that turns into each other, and it crushes the grain so that it breaks up the husk a little bit. And then we have the second, then it'll go down to a screen, and anything that's small enough to fit through the screen will get bypassed the second set, but anything large enough to go on the screen will go through another set of rollers that are a little tighter, and then that'll get crushed up a little bit more. The reason we do that is so we can get into the internal starches that are in the grain, and that it provides the husk. When it gets crushed up, the husk is really, really needed for the filter bed when we get to the brew house. So that's kind of the main function of the mill right here. And then after that, it gets transitioned over to the grist tun. So this is the grist tun. This is where the grain goes to be held until we're ready to brew with it. So, for the first brew of the day, we'll do it the day before, so it's ready to go right when we get in. Do a multiple, we'll do it while we're brewing. So right now, it's got the grain in for the interactive brew beer, the Russian Imperial Stout. This thing can hold up to 2,500 pounds of grain, which allows us to do up to about a 30 to 37 barrel batch of beer. That is kind of everything that we have going on up on the grain deck.
What kind of grains are we using for the Imperial?
I know we're using two-row, a bit of, I should have done my homework a little bit. We got a couple different crystal malt, caterpillars, and some roasted malt as well for that kind of darkness and darker flavor and chocolate and whatnot. So that's kind of the malt that we got going in right now. But and I think we have some rolled oats in there as well to kind of provide a nice mouthfeel for it, a little bit of barley, and some Munich malt as well. And that is all available for you guys to do at home through the homebrew recipe. So hope you guys are looking into that, trying to get into that. If you've never done one, good luck. If you've done 100 of them, let's see how you do. All right, so this is the brew deck. We have a 4-vessel system. I'll kind of explain this before we get down there. But we have our mash tun, our lauter tun, our brew kettle, and then our whirlpool. So every single beer that we've ever made have gone through these 4 vessels. The mash tun, and we'll get into a lot more detail as we start the beer and as we get into the actual brewing of this Russian Imperial Stout. But the mash tun is where we take the dried, crushed up grain from the grist tun, move it over, and we start hydrating it.
We have a question.
Yep.
How fine do we grind our malts?
That's a good question. We have, for each malt, we kind of have a specific setting on our mill, but maybe once we start mashing in, I'll try and grab a sample before it gets wet, and I can show you guys. It might be a little difficult, but you don't want to grind them too much because then you get kind of a powder, which turns into basically a concrete when you're brewing. And that's how you stick to the mash, which isn't, it's not detrimental, but it's not the best thing because then the water's not going to seep through and you got to reset the bed and it turns into a more laborious process than it needs to be. But you crush it up just enough so that you break stuff open so you can see the white starches, but you still want to keep a good husk because that's what your filter bed's going to be later on in the lager tun. So I hope I answered that, and then hopefully I can show you guys the sample a little later. So that's where we heat it with water. We'll let you see it once we start doing it. A little heads up is everything on here is going to be hot, so there's going to be steam coming out, so it might be a little hard to see with the camera, but it kind of looks like a giant vat of oatmeal at this point in time. And then we do our conversion, which I'll let the brewers kind of get into a little later. And then we push it into a lager tun. The lager tun has a set of screens on the bottom, which you'll see, and the grain bed sits on top of that. And then the water will kind of sprinkle through it. It'll take all the sugar that we converted from starch, and then we start pulling it into the brew kettle. And that process is called lautering. That's kind of a longer process, so we may take a little break in the video at that point. But then we get into the boil kettle where we boil our beer. That's also where we start adding hops, but you'll be able to see all that a little later on as well. And the boils take, we do a 30-minute pre-boil and a 60-minute boil, so that process will take a bit, but we might cut off and do a little something different during that time. But then we go into the whirlpool, and the whirlpool kind of spins the beer, so all of the hop solids and coagulated proteins and whatnot go to the middle of the vessel. And then it's on a raised platform, kind of like a moat, so that we have the ability to pull from the outside and not pull the solids into the tanks.
You want to introduce the brewers?
I know they're wrapping up another brew right now, so I'll go back down and around, and we can kind of walk through the brewery and kind of give you guys a brewery tour beforehand, and then we can get into it a lot more in a little bit.
Okay. You have a thing to mark it since the start of the actual cooking brewing. Like a page with a flip. We'll count down 3, 2, 1, and then start it, so there'll be a break in the video for later.
All right, so now we're on the production floor where safety glasses are necessary at all times. So if it fog up a little bit, it's because of the mask. Sorry about that. But so there's the brew house that we were talking about, and then these are 2 RO tanks. This is where we hold the RO water until we're ready to brew with it. But actually, there's one more kind of step in between. The water will go into our cold liquor tank and our hot liquor tank. Yep, we can walk back there. Please be careful of the hoses. So we have our hot liquor and our cold liquor. They're basically just holding vessels for our water, but we can control the temperature of this one. So the one closest to us is our hot liquor tank, so we keep that around 180 degrees so that when we need to mash in, we have super hot water. And then the one behind it is our cold liquor tank. So we take that RO water and we cool it down to about 40, 42 degrees, so it's not quite freezing, but we need to have both spectrums because then we can mix them together and we can hit our strike temperature and all of the temperatures that we need for brewing properly. And then actually right behind me, I can show you, this is kind of our SAFCO, it's our test batch system. So it's nothing super high tech, it's just kind of a few pegs that have been, the top's been cut off of and some burners placed under it. But it's a fun little thing that we can do for side projects, anything that we want to test out can come through this before we go on a full scale. So it's a fun piece of equipment that we get to utilize every now and again to experiment. And our bigger batch stuff is usually gone through at least 1 or 2 trials of this so that we can dial it in before we get onto a full scale.
We also cooked chili on it for the Ada Chili Cook-Off that we're re-entering this year.
Yeah. All right, we come back this way.
How long do we keep it in the whirlpool?
The whirlpool, we keep it in between 15 and 20 minutes. And everything up there will be explained in a lot more detail once we get to the actual brewing. But I just kind of want to give you guys an overall kind of brewery facility so you can, I know a lot of people have come here and they can look through the windows, but now the next time you come, you can look through the windows and say that you went on a virtual tour and you can kind of see what things are. And, you know, if you're with your buddies, you can sound super smart, like you just knew all this shit beforehand, and give them a self-guided tour with all the, with everything going on. So as I said, while we were upstairs, we have some 90-barrel tanks, we have some 30s and some 150s. A byproduct of the yeast that goes into the beer is CO2. So if you kind of zoom in on this Stanny bucket, all of those bubbles coming out of here is from the CO2 that the yeast is producing. The yeast will eat the sugar and the oxygen and produce alcohol and CO2. So everything bubbling out is the CO2.
That's grapefruit IPA in there.
We have a couple small Grundies, so that's just kind of experimental stuff. We do our no rolls variants in there. That allows us to play through a lot of stuff and kind of experiment with a lot of stuff that way. So these are 150 barrel tanks. But fun fact for every tour I do is if you were to have a 6-pack a day, how long would it take you to drink one of these tanks? And the answer is 22.6 years. There's a lot of beer in one of these tanks. You'll see a lot of these product hoses throughout the brewery. That's how we transfer beer from the brew house to tanks to pretty much everything. It all goes through these product hoses. We sanitize them before beer gets in. We punch them with CO2 so that there's no oxygen intake. And then at the end, when we're all done, we swing them through a caustic cycle and get them ready to go for the next batch. We are going down into the part of the brewery that's very loud right now. We have our centrifuge running right now, and our packaging line is running. So it's going to get very loud. I hope you guys can still hear me. Please let us know in the chat if you cannot. So we have a few different things. This is our centrifuge, so 95% of the beer that we send through to our bright tanks goes through the centrifuge. What happens here is we'll give you a look and then we can back up and I'll talk in a little bit. So what the centrifuge does is it spins the beer at a really, really high speed, about 6,800 RPMs, and that allows all of the solids and the proteins and anything like that to shoot to the outside, and it clarifies the beer. So it's not technically filtering the beer, it's technically separating the beer. So some breweries say that they don't filter beer, but they have the centrifuge, so it's separated. We have a few different things. We have the centrifuge, so we separate beer, which is awesome. We really, really like the centrifuge. But we also have a DE filter. That's right behind me. So you can kind of push beer through the filter bed to clarify it that way. And we also have sterile filters, which are those kind of satellite-looking things back there. which this beer will be sterile filtered, so we'll do another live stream to kind of explain that when we get to that point in time. But that allows us to sterile filter this product because it's got 3 sets of filters that will back up and not let kind of solids through. And then the last one, the actual sterile, is 0.45 microns thick, and the smallest organism that can harm beer is 0.5. So it's actually smaller than a microorganism, which is how we have a sterile product in the end, which allows our shelf life to be better, and it allows us to back sweeten with kind of some sugar and other things without it re-fermenting in the can or the keg or whatever kind of package we're going into. We'll try and get away from the centrifuge so I don't have to yell. Alright, so we have our bright tanks right here. Our bright tanks are kind of just a holding vessel for our beer. The only thing that we do to them while they're in the bright tank is manipulate the carbonation so that we can get the volumes of CO2 that we need for each specific style. And then it's just, kind of waiting for us to package it. We have them super cold. We package our beer as cold as we possibly can, so a lot of them are 34 degrees. And we get right into the packaging aspect of it. So we have 130 barrel, 290 barrels, 3 150 barrels. Then once we get to that, we move into packaging. So right now we're packaging 98 Problems, which is our core IPA. We have a dual cast line, so as you can see, kind of running at full speed right now. The cans are coming in and getting filled. And we'll also do a full video on live stream on this on the day that we're actually packaging as well. But you can come in here a little bit, kind of check it out. So you can see the stems going in. The first set of stems is filling the can with CO2, so it purges out all the oxygen. And what that does is oxygen and beer does not mix. It's very bad and it just murders the beer. So we purge out all the oxygen and move on, get filled with the beer, get tapped, get steamed, and exterior rinse and dry, and then gets pushed out, and then comes down the line. Our box reactors, so we moved into a bottom stick tank, trying to put in and see how it works. Beer cans get pushed in, they get moved over, and the box is glued around it. And then we put it down. And they get pushed out, we put them into our trays, put them on the pallet, we wrap the pallet, then it goes into the cooler, and at that point in time, we are ready to send the beer out to our wholesalers. So open again. It's also very cold in here, so we won't spend a lot of time in here. But it's kind of where all of our product goes until it's ready to go on truck. From new stuff to our unsweetened flavors, strawberry kiwi, passion fruit, and pineapple papaya. Yep. Yeah, fermentation we have set for about a week or so, 7 days-ish of warm, so that we get the proper fermentation. Then we crash it down for another week or so that we can crash out and settle out all the yeast and all kind of that stuff. And then it allows for secondary fermentation to heat up some off flavors and things like that, which we will be getting into a little later today as well. I think right now we're going to stop the stream so that we can go set it up in its permanent spot for the day up on the brew house, but we should be back in 5 to 10 minutes. Cool. Thanks everyone for checking it out. See you in a bit. Here we go. Welcome back. So we are back on the brew house. We're about ready to get started with the actual Russian Imperial Interactive Brew. But I'll quickly introduce a couple people. This is Sheldon King. He's our general manager of brewery operations. He writes all of our recipes. So he wrote both the Russian Imperial, the homebrew, all that kind of stuff, including the beer that we're doing right now beforehand, which is our Call Me Hazy Tropical. Call Me Hazy Juicy has been out for a couple months in our rotating IPA series, and Call Me Hazy Tropical is the next one up. So we're looking to release that in about 3 weeks and get that going for the heat of summer. We also have Casey Conley, who's one of our brewers up here. He's been with us for quite a while. He started on the packaging line, worked his way through the cellar and up to the brew house. He's the same creator of Red Beard's Revenge, which we'll be making a secondary review coming up pretty soon. And we got Jay Green, who's floating around doing some other stuff too, but another one of our brewers will be popping up throughout the day. So I believe we're ready to get started, and I'll kind of turn it over to these guys as they start the brewing process and hit us up with any questions.
All right, so we've already milled in all the malt. It's currently being held in our grist tun, right behind you there. So yeah, we are ready to start the mashing process for the brew. So we are starting here with a little bit of base water. And then once we get about 50 gallons from there, we're going to start dropping the malt in. We are targeting a rest temperature of 155 degrees. So we're coming in right now, we're a little over 170 degrees with the water. And, we'll adjust as needed. as the malt comes in to try and hit that 155-degree mark.
Do you want to talk about your computer system, how you guys control everything?
Yeah, we can. Can they see that good? All right, so this here is our computer system that we use to control everything on the brew house. All of our valves and everything are pneumatically operated, so it's a pretty centralized system. Casey, I don't know if you want to click through some of the tanks. So what we're looking at right now is the mash tun. He just switched it over to the lauter tun there, which we'll be going into next. There's the brew kettle, which that Call Me Hazy is boiling in right now. And then finally, that's the whirlpool screen there. So that's our 4 vessels. We can also track all of our tanks, the fermenters, the crash programs, their current temperatures, everything down in the cellar.
We've got a question.
Yeah.
How long does it take to warm your mash tun for your strike temp?
So that little bit of plating water that we're getting in right now should warm it up, especially right now during the summer. In the winter, the first turn of the day, we might come in and drop in a couple gallons and spin it for a few minutes, but usually it's not too much preheating needed, just because our water temp is so high to begin with.
We got a guy from Peru checking us out.
Nice.
Awesome. Welcome.
So Casey just started dropping the grain in.
Okay.
Mash tun.
What are you adding right there?
It's our brewing salt.
Here, you want to show them, camera? There you go.
It's our brewing salt, so it adjusts our pH and our water profile. We start with RO water, so basically just all neutral water, so we can adjust any water profile around the world to hit any beer style that we're looking for.
So what's our target pH? What's our target pH for this group?
I wrote it down on the homebrew. Yeah, it's on the homebrew. Yeah, running for a 5.5.
And what do you have there?
It's rolled out. We use this to kind of help with the mouthfeel in the body.
I'll take some out and show them. You want to grab some oats out of the bag and throw them on a liquid? Get a little handful. Oh, sweet.
So yeah, basically, just like your normal oatmeal, just basically it's milled oats.
Oh, did we spin our mash for the whole process?
No, so currently,
You gotta listen to the microphone.
so we're as the grain is dropping into the mash, we're slowly turning that mixer up to keep it nice and mixed. Once we're full and we enter the rest period, we turn our mixer off. Some places might leave their mixer on at a slow speed during that time, but we usually turn ours off. And we'll do our rest, and then we kick that mixer back on right before we start transferring back over into the lauter tun. So that question there for Ricardo, we opened in 2012, September of 2012. How many liters is this monthly production?
Matt.
Number one thing is we're in the U.S., so I have no idea how many liters it is.
It's 4 liters to a gallon, give or take, right?
I don't have the mental capacity to do that math in my head.
31 gallons to a barrel, right?
Yeah.
4, so 120.
I know on average we did about 1,500 barrels per month last year in 2019. But our barrels are really seasonal. Obviously.
Oh, we can flip this to metric?
No.
Oh, no.
We're very seasonal. So in the summer we brew a lot more beer. We, it's just a busier time. We have more varieties of kind of summer beers like that. And then during the winter we slow down a little bit just due to the fact that it's cold. There's not as many people going out and whatnot. And we are Michigan only, and the Michigan winters can be very harsh. So, but on average, it's about 1,500 barrels per month.
Put the math in. So how much grain are we loading into this?
Yeah, just over 1,700 pounds of grain for our mash bill, with a little over 500 gallons of water. It's like we're roughly halfway done mashing in right now.
And then what's our total batch size of this one compared to what we can do?
So this is a 30-barrel brew house. This batch is going to be a 15-barrel. We actually do quite a bit of high gravity brewing here, so we make batches up to 45 barrels at a time. And then, high gravity brewing is exactly how it sounds. If you don't know, it's you're just brewing a higher gravity Play-Doh wort than what you would want. And once you knock out into the fermenter, you just liquor it back with water.
So what does gravity mean in relation to the beer?
So gravity it's your Play-Doh. It's how much sugar is in the wort.
And the sugar's converted into the alcohol?
Yep. So yeah, you use that sugar level to determine essentially what ABV you're going to hit in the end.
what's our best-selling beer? Beer Black.
You want to give us a story about that?
Beer Black is our #1 selling beer by quite a bit. It was something that kind of happened organically. We had, it was black lager. There's confusion there. It was a lager one time, and that was in the brew pub, and the demand for it was so high that we had to switch it to an ale because ales can ferment a lot faster. So since then, back in 2012, we changed it to the black ale, and it was just the #1 thing in the tap room. We started distribution and draft only. It remains the #1 thing out in the market, and to this day, almost 8 years later, it's still our #1 beer. So we have it in draft, so half barrels, 6 barrels, 6 packs, and 12 pack cans as well.
And now new 16-ounce cans.
And now new 16-ounce cans as of last month. So look forward to 16-ounce cans, golf courses, gas stations, anywhere the guy behind the camera can sell it.
Difference between ales and lagers.
So the difference between ales and lagers are they're both yeast. It's the type of yeast that it is. Basically, there's two types of. In general, there's about 2 types of beers: ales and lagers. A lager yeast is bottom fermenting, and it takes up to 3 to 4 weeks to ferment fully out. An ale yeast, top fermenting, and it will take about 14 days to ferment out. So there are hundreds of thousands of different types of yeast that you can use for brewing and baking and pretty much everything else. But that is the main thing for beer is we have ales and lagers. Do you want to explain to them what you're watching on there and looking for? Yeah, so show them. All right. All right, cool.
All right, so here on the computer, what we're looking at, if you go to the mash tun tab up top here, this is the motor that's sending the grain into the mash tun.
That one right there.
Yeah. And then this valve right here is controlling the strike water coming in. So the grain and the water meet each other here. This is our flow meter telling us how much water. And down here's our mixer. So we're currently at 100% on our mixer there. And then right here we have the temp probe. So we were aiming for 155. We're currently at 154.5, 0.2. And it does have our total inches there. So as we're mashing in, like I said earlier, this started out at about 45%, and as we filled it with the grain, we just slowly bumped that mixer up. And now we're just kind of watching, making sure it's mixing properly, everything's going good. Our temperature is looking pretty good. And if you look up here, there's also this mill tab here. That is the grist case upstairs. It usually will tell you how full it is here, but it also has our total pounds. So we're about wrapping up here. I'm mashing in, only about 50 pounds to go with about 100 gallons of water, a little less than 100 gallons of water. So we're rapidly approaching the end of our mash-in. So in order to control our strike temperature, right here we have two blending valves. So right now they're closed because we're trying to hit that 155 degrees, but on a normal brew when we're getting close to 150, 152, we open these up and it basically just doses in a little bit of cold water to control that strike temperature. So we're almost out of grain. Actually looks like we're out right now. So I'm going to shut our slide gate here. We're going to turn that grain motor off. And now is when we will open these blend valves up. We still have about 50 gallons of water to go. We don't want that remaining water to just maintain at 170. We want it to get closer to our target temp of 155. So open both of those blending valves there. You can see our strike water temperature on this gauge right here. We are currently backflowing, so that's not really going to do anything. But we're about out of water too.
So Ricardo, we've switched to selling all off-premise sales now. None of the bars are open, but they are reopening. So we've got all fresh beer getting ready to go out to the on-premise. We'll be at 50% capacity, so we don't expect it to be quite what it was last year, but our off-premise sales, especially in the big groceries and some of our independents, have been awesome so far. Cool. So what are you recording there?
Just recording temps and time of what time we got done with our mash and how long our rest is going to be before we start transferring.
Sorry about the shakiness. We've yet to upgrade to wireless technology, so we're getting through it.
All right, you can see the top of our mash there isn't mixed all that well. Our mixer doesn't really do a great job, especially once you get a bunch of grain in there. So we got our little paddle here. We're gonna do a little manual mixing, just try and even up that top there, make sure everything's hydrated and nice and mixed.
You know what kind of pressure we get on our fire hoses?
I do not know.
4 times normal, or
It's I mean, all of our water is city water supply, so I am not sure what it gets reduced down to once it comes to the building.
so what are we doing here?
Okay, so I think I heard Casey say that he recorded the time. So once we were done adding in all the water and grain that we needed, we turned our mixer off and started our rest time. So for us, it's going to be about 25 minutes. For homebrewers or people that have a combined mash and lauter, you're looking at closer to an hour. But for us, it's 25-minute rest in here, hitting that 155-degree temperature. We're converting right now. All those enzymes in the grain are converting the starches to sugar, and we're just giving it all the time it needs to do its magic.
So where's all of our malt and yeast come from?
So malt, we bring in malt from pretty much every malt company there is. We use a lot of Brew. Our silo malt is provided from Proximity Malt.
Where are they located?
They have a plant in Delaware and out in Colorado.
Okay.
But we bring in a lot of Wireman. We got some William Crispin, a little bit of Simpsons. So we use a lot of stuff from across the board, really.
Cool. And where's our yeast come from?
Our house yeast is Y yeast, American Ale 1056. We've used other yeast companies. We get a little bit from White Labs and a little bit from Omega, some of our one-off stuff. So,
do you know the countries of origin for those?
It's all American.
All American,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And Connor, you want to talk about the pub reopening real quick? The Parent Pub is reopening on Monday the 8th. We will be open at about 50% capacity. Not about, that's all we can do. So we'll be open at 50% capacity. We've already got all the tables set up for 50%. Really excited to open back up. We will have a kind of limited draft menu to start. Instead of our full 36 taps, we'll have 24. Still a lot of variety for everyone to have. And some new stuff as well. We're going to have at least 3 years of no rolls on for vertical. Felt bad that we weren't able to do a no rolls party this year, so we're going to have a 3-year vertical on in the pub for everybody, along with new seltzer flavors, new Call Me Hazy beers. We have a lot of new stuff. We had a lot of innovation in the last few months that was kind of muted due to COVID-19 and all the kind of stuff that happened with that. So, but come on in. Starting Monday, we'll be open 11 to 8. You have to come in, put your name in, and if we're on a wait, you will have to wait in your car, and we'll shoot you a text or anything when your table is ready to come back in. We're going through extra steps to sanitize everything after every time someone new has left the table. So we're taking every precaution that we can. We're still going to continue to do our takeout and delivery. We currently do our own delivery Thursday through Saturday. We're partners with Uber Eats and Grubhub, so you can get our food that way as well. But really excited to get people back in. Excited for people to be able to try all the new beer that we have coming out, and have a pint in a bar. It'll be great. Patio open. Patio will be open. Our kind of indoor-outdoor patio will be open with the garage doors that kind of open, but we also have our outdoor area that will be open as well. Instead of the picnic tables, we have put outdoor patio furniture out there so that we can maintain the guided, no more than 6 people, 6 feet apart, all that kind of stuff. So we'll have all that, and bringing back some of the pub favorites like fried pickles for food, and then kind of on a limited menu for that to start with. But overall, we'll be back and ready to go Monday. We're excited to see everybody. Pretty empty.
I'm going to set this down and then go grab some of the new cans. Okay. All right.
All right, welcome back. So we're currently plating the lauter some. We can get into that before we do the transfer. But brewing is a lot of hurry up and wait. You go really fast, do some stuff, then we gotta wait 20 minutes for for the mash rest, and then we hurry up, we move it over, and then we gotta wait for the lauter. So we'll try and fill some time with some random trivia questions and some self-promoting because we can. So we got fair black 16-ounce cans. They're kind of sold loose for distributors and for accounts and whatnot, but we do sell 4-packs and pack-packs in the pub. I love them because I have to get up less when I'm drinking around the campfire and whatnot. So they're great for everyday stuff, and it's a little bit more beer and bang for your buck. But we will get into the plating that we're doing now. So if you look into the lauter tun, you can kind of see, I hope through the water getting down in there, the screens on the bottom. That's the false bottom that I was referring to earlier. So the grain bed will get pushed from the mash tun into the lauter tun. And I can let Sheldon and Casey speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah, so sorry, I didn't quite hear what Connor had said, but
Go for it.
we got the plating water going in right now. That actually just ended, so we get that base layer of water over the false bottom there. We also have a little bit of rice hulls in there to help with the lauter. Yeah, so
What is a lauter?
So lautering is the process of we're extracting the sugars that we just converted in the mash tun. We're going to be running water through that grain bed. It's going to extract those sugars, and we run that off into the kettle. Is I guess the simplest way I can explain it. It's just the process of us running the water through the grain, extracting the sugars, and filling the kettle with the wort. So a lot of places, this vessel and the mash tun are the same. There's advantages and disadvantages to that. For us, we have the 4 vessel, so that's why we only do the 25-minute rest. All that conversion time, usually most people do about an hour. We have to account for the transfer into here. Plus, we do about a 15-minute Vorlauf on all our beers, which we can get into that when we get there.
Any funny name parts of the machine on this one?
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think there's not really any crazy names on this one. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we have the Vorlauf parts,
Can you
but
spell that?
Vorlauf.
That's the thing. Well, and what beer was in there? What are we following up ours with?
So the first batch of the day was Call Me Hazy, the tropical version, and yeah, that's already been out of this vessel. We're kettle full on that one and boiling right now. That's I don't know if Connor got into it earlier. That's the big advantage of the 4 vessel system is the way we stagger our brews. Because we have the 4 vessels, we time it so the next brew is like, it's about a 2-hour gap between brews. Whereas if you only have like a 2 vessel system, you'd have to wait pretty much until the boil is completely done before you can mash in that next brew. But we mash ours in basically even before we're kettle full on the previous one. So
how many turns or brews does it take to fill some of these tanks, and how long does that take you to do in a day?
So it depends on what size batch we're doing. If we're doing, so the fermenters that you can see right here off the brew house, those are 90-barrel tanks. If we're doing 30-barrel batches, then it takes 3 turns. If we're doing 45-barrel turns on brew house, it would only be 2. The biggest vessel we currently have is 150 barrel, and we will do we can do 37.5 barrel turns on our brew house, high gravity, and it'll take four turns to fill that. Or if we do 30 barrels, that would be 5 turns. So
what hours are you guys usually brewing for?
it depends on the day. Our max production, we would be starting at 5 in the morning, and the last guy here would be out around 11 o'clock to midnight, and that would be a 5-turn day. So the most we currently do is 5 turns. We're only Monday through Friday on production right now. So.
Cool. And that about taps us out for space, right, in the fermenters?
Yeah. If we're doing 5-turn days, we're filling those fermenters pretty quick, and they won't really be able to package it fast enough. So.
What's your favorite beer to brew?
Ooh. Tough one. I would say probably grapefruit IPA, just because it's such an easy lautering beer. Probably the most fun one. I don't know. That's a tough one. Call Me Hazies are pretty fun. Just the some of the fruit peel additions and stuff that we do to it, and all the hops. It's an interesting beer to make.
What sort of stuff are we adding to the new tropical?
So for the tropical, that has lime peel, and the main hop is Sabro. So that's somewhat of a newer hop. Super tropical. So that's pretty much the best way to describe it. It's super tropical, and it's kind of takes over as the main hop in that beer. So.
Yeah. And about how soon till it starts shipping out with the tropical?
About 3 weeks.
About 3 weeks? 3 weeks? Cool. So then we'll be able to get really fresh beer. And it's got a green can. Correct?
Yeah, I don't know if we can put a can in the chat, but
Yeah, we'll have Lindsay bounce a photo on here on the next break. What's your favorite beer to drink?
We currently have a Scotch Ale on tap, or we did have it on tap right before quarantine. That I absolutely loved that beer. I thought it was fantastic.
What's it called?
Just Scotch Ale.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. As far as I guess more mainstay pairing beers, I would say probably Passion Fruit Goza. It's a good all-around beer year-round, especially in the summer.
Yeah.
I usually crush a couple of them as I'm mowing my lawn. So.
And how long does your lawn take to mow?
It takes me about 3 hours to mow my lawn. I got a pretty big yard.
Yeah. So Casey, what's your favorite beer to brew?
Favorite beer to brew? Oh, man.
Go ahead.
I don't know. I like brewing them all.
Yeah.
You know, not really a love-hate or anything. It's kind of fun to do. So.
Yeah. And to drink?
Really digging our low-rise. So it's our new low-cal IPA that we got out. Super crushable. It's kind of a hoppy lawnmower beer. So, you know, if you haven't tried it, try it. It's a great summer beer.
Cool. And Connor's got the new tropical can right here. So this will be the new one, heading to stores everywhere. Cool. The back there. Cool. What's your favorite beer to brew? What style?
favorite style to brew?
Filters, anything super light, anything really delicate, kind of puts a little added pressure on you. So I was trying to, not that we're not going for perfection every time, but it really kind of gets on you. So it's a lot of fun. They really concentrate on something that's kind of light, like a Pilsner. And besides no rules, what's your daily drinker?
Well, right now it's low rise. I've been hammering low rise a lot, but I have definitely consumed more cans of black than anything else in my entire life. Sweet. Cool. So, oh, go over here.
Oh,
We starting to kick it in?
yeah, it's going in right now.
Cool. Maybe we can get it in here without
Kind
fogging.
of look down there, you can see the mash
There you go,
moving
higher.
in.
That is bigger than that other side.
So we hit our 25-minute rest time. We kicked the mixer and the mash back on, and we started pumping it over here into the lauter tun.
So we had a question about becoming a beer cicerone. Have you guys done that? Or you want me to talk to it?
I had taken the test once,
The test or the beer server course?
the test. So I did the beer serving. You have to do the beer serving first.
Here's a
then you
little closer.
compete.
Talk about the stages.
So you have the beer serving, which I believe is just online. It's not too bad. And then you can take the certified Cicerone, and then I believe it's the advanced Cicerone, and then the master Cicerone. But they're currently working on one in between the advanced and the master,
Yeah.
just because they want to mess with you even more. The test is insane. It is an obscene amount of time that you have to study for it. You do a written exam for like 4 hours, and then you do a tasting exam for an hour. It's really interesting. It really gets you into the nitty-gritty parts of brewing, and you learn about a lot of different styles that you really don't know about. Got to really kind of dive into a lot of sour beer, a lot of Belgian beer, and stuff that I just haven't had a lot of experience with. So it's very cool kind of taking the time and studying for it, and then all the beer that you are drinking and trying to get familiar with, so that when you get to the tasting portion of it, you need to know everything. You need to know exactly what a certain style tastes like, if it's an off flavor, why is it not tasting right, what that off flavor is. They test you on, I believe, 6 basic off flavors. It's been a couple of years, but I think it was like diacetyl, DMS, skunky, oxidation, isovaleric acid, and there's one more. And just random. And so they do side-by-side tastings where they give you 2 beers. You have to say if they're the same beer, if it's a different beer, or what style it is. And then they'll splice one, but maybe not the other. You have to say, if they give you a beer, say, is this beer good to serve to people? If it's not, what's wrong with it? How did it happen? How could it be prevented? So it's a very, very in-depth thing, and that's only for level 2. You also get into food tasting and pairing with beer and whatnot, and then the advanced Cicerone's even more in-depth on that, and the master Cicerone, I've talked to someone who's taken it, that, you have to fly somewhere, and you got to talk to them, you go through a full brewing process, you actually have to set up a full draft system, and some really, really intense kind of testing on that one.
And it's out of state, right? Most of the testing, or is it like a quarterly test? I believe we had our distributors just went through this. So
for the certified Cicerone, they will come and travel, and you can do satellite areas.
Okay.
And then for the advanced, I think you have to go to their location in Chicago, I want to believe.
Okay.
And I'm not even sure where the master takes place.
Yeah.
We,
Oh, yeah. So what kind of a pump rate do we have? How fast can we fill this thing?
It takes us about, it depends on the size of the grain bed, but it takes about 20 to 30 minutes to fully transfer over.
we don't want to go full speed on the pump because we don't want it to beat the grain up. We don't want it to pulverize it, because then we can get a kind of a rough filter bed. We want a nice fluffy filter bed so that we can lauter everything through without too much trouble.
So we got a longer question. So how do you guys handle diacetyl? I seem to struggle with it on my homebrew scale. I'm
meticulous about sanitation, and I also have temperature-controlled fermentation. What should I do differently?
Well, a big one.
The big one is making sure that you're going through the full secondary fermentation process. That diacetyl is going to come out in the beer, and that yeast is going to kind of eat it again and make it go away. So that's kind of the main thing, is make sure that your fermentation is dialed. Temperature controlled fermentation is great. I would do some research on kind of a smaller systems on exactly what type of temperature you need to be at. If you're doing some lagers or whatnot, you might have to do diacetyl rest, which is increasing the temperature for a little bit. So really hone into what type of style you're doing, and then the fermentation that you want for each style. Having a temperature controlled fermentation at home is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, just add, like, the diacetyl rest step for a beer, like you said, secondary fermentation. As long as you give it a long enough rest, it should work itself out.
A little kind of at-home thing you can do is, if you're worried about that you're going to have it, if you don't think you've cleared it all up, you can put some into a cup and heat it up. And then when it heats up, you can it'll come out and you can smell it. And if that happens, then it's not quite finished yet.
Sweet. Glad we have you guys here. I would have just said brew more sours.
I'm trying to think right now. The main sour that we have out is passion fruit goza. It's a nice light goza, kind of some Hawaiian sea salt in there with a lot of passion fruit. That's my summer go-to beer for sure. Nice and light. I think it's like 4.8% alcohol. And then we've done some sours in the past. We have Lazarus for sale in the pub right now, which, you want to speak on what Lazarus kind of is?
So Lazarus is a bottle-conditioned sour that we did. It's super light flavor, no fruit added or anything. It's all based off of. We pull that off of fooders.
There's a couple of barrels that we thought were dead, so hence the name Lazarus. So we moved them into some oak barrels to see if they would sour, and they did, and it turned out really great. We have all of our vault beers for sale right now in the pub. So I think we've got our apricot sour, our amber saison, and our pellicle, which is a dark sour lager. So we do have a few sours available in bottles in the pub right now. And then we're looking to maybe do some kettle sours over the summer. And we've always got, the last few years, we've done a sour soiree party in our barrel room. So we always have a sour beers released in, I believe it's October. So you can kind of look forward to that, because we always try and do some one-off barrels that we have. Fortunately, we don't have Wi-Fi or anything that can go into our sour barn to show you guys that. But we have some sour barrels aging. It just takes a long time, so it's not something that we can keep up with all the time. Rosalaire is our most popular sour, or Flanders Red, but it takes about 18 months or so to get that where we like it. So that's why it's not a yearly release. It's kind of, the sour beer will tell you when it's ready.
So what do we have in the fruiters, and can you explain to them what those are?
Yeah, so fooders are actually used in the wine industry. It's basically just a gigantic barrel. We have 3 of them. I believe there were like 2 90 barrels and
2 70s and 1 55.
55. So we got those going. We got those in probably 3 years ago now, I think.
We pulled off of them a couple times. The first kind of package release was our black currant sour. That was a couple years ago.
And we won a gold medal with that one, correct?
We won a medal. I don't remember what it was. Sure, we won a gold medal with that one. We've done some pub one-offs off of the fooders a couple times, just for some draft beer, but nothing too big package-wise.
Yeah. We have so each one is inoculated with a different type of sour yeast.
What are your favorite ones, and what do we use?
So I'm definitely a lacto fan. We usually blend when we pull off the fooders. We're blending back with some of the individual barrels.
Yep. Oh, cool. Now you want to explain what you're doing over here?
Basically just basically spraying out what grain is left over from our mash transfer.
what are we brewing next?
This is the last brew of the day
Okay, cool.
today. And then tomorrow we've got more tropical, call me hazy.
So this guy's full now, right?
Yeah, so we're right at the end there of the transfer. Casey's gonna rinse that little bit of grain that's still in the mash tun down so it gets pumped over.
Oh, Lindsay, you want to speak to the creative process of the beer labels? This is Lindsay, everybody.
Behind the scenes, tuning in to everyone's questions and answers. So it's not Ricardo. Just to tell us about the creative process of your labels. Essentially, it starts working with our brewers. So I like to get up here right on the brew deck, understand all the ingredients, the malt profile, the hops that all go into this style of beer. And from there, I'm just doing a lot of research on what are those flavor characteristics of that particular hop or that malt. And from there, we just have some fun in creating a name. It gets a little bit difficult dealing with trademarks. We've gone through back and forth, loving a name, not being able to get it, but really just works with myself and my creative team on really executing that name. And then from there, just having a lot of fun with the label.
And how did we go about this one?
So this one was actually a voting process. So in week 5, we opened it up to the public for them to submit a name for this beer. We had over 500 name submissions. From there, we took it down to a top 5, and then we had the public, you guys, all vote on the name. And the winner was Self-Morantine. That was from Ashley and Jeff out of Chesterfield, Michigan. So we jumped on a Zoom call with them, and we were able to discuss through the creative process. We wanted to create a little bit of a unique element that's known to them. So the label, will do a sneak peek here probably later this evening on the beer label, but just like the name, Self-Morantine, we've got 3 little houses with all of our 3 ingredients, the marshmallow, the vanilla, and the chocolate, all, huddled in their quarantine little houses, coming together to create this awesome beer. So we'll definitely let you guys know, sneak peek on this beer. It'll be releasing end of June in 16-ounce 4-packs.
Oh,
Want to hit it one more time?
oh yeah, sweet. Do you have some of our hit list of the worst names?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, let's read some of those off for everybody. All right.
So these are just some fun names. We'll kind of rattle off some of the submissions while we've got some time waiting here. We have some Puff and Stuff, which is a good one from John. The Integrated Puff is another one. Sweet Dream Stout. Hey guys, it's time for another stout. Sweet Relief. A no-gram stout. All really good names. Like I said, we had over 500 names, so it was really tough to choose just our top 5. My marshmallow brings all the beer to the yard. No s'more problem. S'more vanilla, please. Got that sweet tooth. So all really great names. You guys did a really awesome job, because that's kind of one of the hardest parts in the marketing is choosing that name.
Sweet. What are you doing here, man?
I'm taking a mash sample for pH.
There you go. Talk us through the whole process and give us the names of all these cool things, the looking glass and all that.
So this is sight glass.
Sight glass.
It's a looking glass in the book.
Yeah. That's why I thought it might have done that.
All right, so what you're looking at right here is it's our sight glass on our Vorlauf. It basically just shows us the clarity of the beer and our flow. That's how we make sure that we're basically getting as much clarification as we can before we start sending it over to the boil kettle, because you don't want any grain fragments or anything like that getting over into the beer. So we use this to basically make sure that it's as clear as possible before we start sending it to the boil kettle. And then over here we've got our hydrometers. We use this to check our gravity so we know that we're getting our extraction and conversion that we need for the sugars to make the alcohol in the beer.
And those look pretty fragile. How often do those break?
Every couple of months one will get broken, but as long as you don't drop them, they stay for a little bit.
And what's the tube for?
That's our sample tube. So basically, we'll put it in here, and we turn this on. Water basically just circulates cold city water, and then that helps us cool down the wort sample so that we can get it to the right temperature for our gravity readings.
And what temperature do we need it to get the gravities?
Anywhere below like 80.
Cool. And so the next question for the brewers, are there any styles that are more difficult and finicky than others? And are any styles more forgiving to brew?
Yes. 100%. Anything light. If you do a nice light lager or pilsner, kind of like I was referencing earlier, you got to be real careful and you got to have it dialed in, because a lighter body is going to show off just basically the malt for like a pilsner, and then anything that you mess up is going to come through the liquid pretty strong. As far as brews on mass stuff, I don't necessarily think so. You'll be able to find imperfections in any beer. They're there, but I think the bigger, darker beers, just because there's more flavor, more complex roast character and stuff like that, would be, I guess, under that category a little bit.
Now, are sours easier to brew because you're letting them get the bad yeast into it?
Sours can be very difficult, and it really depends on what type of sour you're doing. But especially when you inoculate it with a different yeast strain, you basically want to quarantine it. You don't want it touching anything in the brewery that's going to see a non-sour beer, because it can infect everything very quickly.
Cool. What do we got here? So we're chilling it down?
Yeah, basically just chilling down our mash sample. The only reason we don't put it into our chiller is because it's got grain particles and stuff in it that we don't want making it into our finished product. So we don't try to keep the clear beer in there and basically just slowly manually do the cooling over here with our mash samples.
At what point do we take our first gravity reading for the beer, and what's our target?
It'll be the first is when we first send it over our first running. So right when we kick on the pump, go to our brew kettle, we'll pull our first runnings.
And what's a running?
Basically just the first sampling of the beer. So basically the first couple ounces that are going in, you're just getting that sample so you know what your start point is. And then at the end of the process, we'll pull final runnings so we know our starting and our end. And we're shooting for about an average with our pre-boil.
What specific salts do we use to achieve our water profile?
So, I know Connor went through the RO system earlier. The three salts we use are calcium carbonate, calcium chloride, and calcium sulfate.
And what are we using with this one?
So this one, we use all three in this beer. I know I listed the homebrew recipe. So for us with RO water, we used 1.5 pounds of calcium carbonate, 3/4 of a pound of calcium chloride, and 1/4 of a pound of calcium sulfate. And that just gets us that nice stout water profile. Pretty balanced.
You can see the color. It's starting to get nice and dark and oily. So what are you looking for with the pH there?
Basically, we're shooting for right now. That's just our sample solution right there. We're still a little bit too hot to pull our pH right now, but we're shooting for right around that like 5.4 to 5.6. Trying to stay under that 6 pH. Yeah, looks like we're gonna shoot for 5.5 on that one.
So we're just saying, do we have any temperature going to this, or just more soaking for the most part?
So I don't. Have you been able to see the boil off at all?
Where's that?
It's coming out. You can kind of see it rippling there on the surface. But so right now we are doing the boil off. So I don't know how well you can see it. Yeah, it's almost. But through that sight glass, when we first started there, you can see how chunky it was. And right now it is pretty much chunky free from what I can tell. So we do that for about 15 minutes. The way I like to describe it is we're basically turning the grain bed into a giant Brita filter. We're just looping the water that's in this from the bottom back on top of the salt. Just running that in a loop, and it makes everything uniform throughout the grain bed. And like I said, it kind of starts filtering itself out like a big giant Brita filter. And once that 15 minutes is up, you can do it for less time. That's what the sight glass is for. We could cut it basically as soon as we're chunk free, but we like to do it for the full 15 to just get that whole rest time. Make sure we are still getting conversion right now, so we like to keep it going as long as we can. Make sure we're getting our full extraction.
Connor, would we ever do a home brewer competition and then brew the winner at a full scale?
So we actually did about 3 or 4 years ago. We did it a couple years in a row, and then participation wasn't there.
Yeah.
The first year we only had about 10 people. The second year we had like 3. So we stopped doing it just because the homebrew. Not sure why the participation dropped off, but
Something to look at into the future, though.
something that we could possibly do in the future. We did partner, I believe it was the Grand Rapids Brewers Guild last year. We partnered with one of the home brewers there, and that's when we made our lemon meringue kettle sour.
That was fantastic.
Was a partner with a local home brewer.
And we've won with that, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, they're asking about the salts again. So what specific salts did we choose to use the water profile? So you want to read those again real quick?
Do we have a link to the home brew?
I think it's right here.
Yeah, what was it? Calcium sulfate, calcium carbonate.
Calcium sulfate, calcium chloride, and calcium carbonate are the 3 salts we use. Those are pretty much the only 3 salts that we use. I know there's some people use a couple other different types. The amounts we use are written down over there if you want to hand me that. So we got pound and a half of calcium carbonate, 3/4 of a pound of calcium chloride, and 1/4 of a pound of calcium sulfate.
And then how much, or
Please
what are
remember
the?
that if you're trying to do the homebrew recipe, to look at the homebrew recipe, because that will completely mess up your beer if you use our amounts.
Yeah, like you said, we have
wanna
RO
tag a
water.
We'll
What
throw
salts-
a link in the chat for you.
and
Oh,
so
sure it is.
what salts you use is 100% based off of what water you have at your house, which is going to be 100% different from the water we use and the water someone else is using. So
And how'd our reading go there?
We hit 548.
548, so right on. Hey, thanks, man. Once it's boiled. Okay. So, what are we looking at on the screen here?
So right now, I am getting our mash tun ready. Like we talked about, the advantage of the 4-vessel system, we still have a beer boiling in our kettle right now. We tried to time it so it would be out of there for this live stream, but that did not work out. So we are going to have to do what we normally do, and we are able to lauter. Instead of going into the kettle, we lauter back into the mash tun. And the mash tun acts as just like a wort receiver. And we'll collect the wort in the mash tun until that next brew is out of the kettle. And once that next brew is out of the kettle, we can then transfer from the mash tun into the kettle and get the boil going. So right now I'm just getting the mash tun here ready to receive.
And that was what you just cleaned out, right?
Yep.
Yep. So, there we go. So, favorite non-Perrin craft beer, guys?
Pretty easy for me. Pretty much anything out of New Glarus. Huge fan of New Glarus. So.
Sun King Wheat Heavy.
Oh man, that's a good question. I like Highlight, but I mean I guess that's same brewery. So have to go with Sheldon. I like New Glarus. Every time I go to Wisconsin, I gotta pick that up. So it's just one of those regional beers that you can only get in Wisconsin. So it's a good one to have.
Lindsay, you got a favorite?
Ooh. See me? I really like Sequence. I'm a big fan of Gozas, so what about you?
Me? Well, I drink seltzers, so that's a different conversation for another day.
All right, so our Vorloff is done here in less than a minute. So we are going to get ready to pull our first running sample. So Casey over there is cranking down our diaphragm valve there. That valve is just in line with the loop for the lauter. So we crank that all the way down. So when we start our lauter, we're not sucking down on our drain bed. So he's pulling our first running sample. Good. And now I'm going to start kicking that over into the mash tun.
They're coming from the top or the bottom?
It takes a minute. Since Casey cranked that valve all the way down, we're literally only pulling through it just a little trickle. So there it goes.
Oh, yeah, there it is, top and bottom.
Yeah, at this point, now that this is just acting as a wort receiver, we're going to we're going to lauder off into here until we're out of the kettle with this other brew. Our mash tun is steam jacketed, so technically we can also get it really close to a boil. So
Sound's gonna bounce off.
hopefully as we transfer into the kettle, it's pretty close to boiling temperature. So normally the lautering process, we shoot for about 1.5 hours in the lauter. Since this is just a 15 barrel batch, it's probably going to take us hopefully close to like an hour. Yeah, it's kind of a slow process. As the lauter goes on, we slowly crank open that valve that Casey had shut. And once that valve is all the way open, we'll kick a pump on like 10%, and then we just slowly bump that pump up as the water goes until we reach our kettle full. Right now we're kind of up. We're just going to keep watching the water level on top of our grain bed here as we're sucking this water down into the collection there. We're gonna have to start sparging. So we gotta, it's just putting water on top. So we're pulling our hot liquor water out. It's spraying on top of the grain bed. That water's coming in at about 170 degrees. So it's at that time a big thing with sparge is you're killing your conversion at that point. Because right now this grain bed's still in the 150s. Those enzymes are still working. So that sparge water at 170 degrees kills off that enzymatic activity and stops our conversion. And that water will just work its way through the grain bed. It pulls the sugars out of the grain that have been converted, and that's what we're collecting right now.
Have we done the readings over there? Still cooler? Okay.
All right, so we're kind of in cruise control now. As we're lautering over, this process can take anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half. So we'll stop the stream right now. I know a couple of these guys are gonna go have some lunch and whatnot, so we'll kick the live stream back up and fill you in on everything we've done in the meantime. But right now we're just kind of cruising on over into the wort receiver right now.
So what's your favorite pairing food? What do you guys like to eat for lunch? What's a brewer's lunch like?
Oh man, if you're feeling really hungry, I always liked the peanut butter burger. I know it's changed names a couple times, but that's definitely a favorite. I would say other than that, though, if you're going on the lighter side, probably boneless wings.
Yeah.
I like the BLT. That's my old trusty go-to. BLT and fries. Can't beat it.
Cali wrap and sweet potato fries. I go to.
You like the aioli? Oh yeah. And can you talk about the smoker that you guys get to use sometimes?
Yeah, so
What's your favorite to cook for the brewers?
we brewed a beer about 6-8 months ago with it was a collab with Dunny out of Oscar Blues. We smoked some cherries in the smoker, and we decided to buy a big fancy smoker to do it in, and so we got that sitting out back, and we every once in a while throw some meat and stuff. I know a bunch of the cellar guys just this past week cooked a pork shoulder and some beans and stuff in it. So.
And I believe they marinate in no rules too, so
Yeah.
quite the expensive pulled pork.
Yeah.
Connor, can you talk about the flavor profile or the target that we're going for this one? We had a guy who asked if this will actually taste like s'mores.
So that's a good question. So the ingredients that we're going into it does not actually contain graham cracker. So it won't be 100% of s'mores, but the naming contest, the overwhelming name submission was all s'mores related. So we did end up going with the s'mores name, but it will have chocolate, vanilla, and marshmallow in it. So you'll have a nice kind of chocolate base. The marshmallow will be there in more of the mouthfeel, and then we'll have a strong vanilla kind of match the creaminess of the stout and kind of go into it. So it'll be very s'mores-esque, but it will not actually contain any graham cracker.
So how are our readings?
We're 18.8.
So what does that mean?
It's about where we're shooting for. We're looking for a 20.5 in the pre-boil, so we usually pick up some, which is the heating process and stuff. So we're right on target to hit our numbers.
So what's that 20 going to do in the process as we boil it?
As we boil it, it'll go up. We're shooting to get about 1.5 points on it. So basically, we're just going to be condensing it down, boiling off liquid, keeping more sugar in there.
Okay.
And then, that's just more food for the yeast.
Yep, if we're off a little bit, we can boil really hard to evaporate more water so that we get the Play-Doh up. Or, if we're too high, then we'll do a light boil to keep a little bit more of that water in there. So we can adjust everything in the boiling process to kind of manipulate and to get to the numbers that we need to.
So that 20 gravity, what's that? What's our in gravity then? What kind of alcohol content are we shooting for with a beer of this style?
We are shooting for a beer around 10%, cool. 10 to 10.5.
So the higher mash temp that we did should allow this beer to ferment out a little higher. It's kind of hard to say with it being our first time brewing it, but our target end gravity would be probably around like a 4.5 Play-Doh. And yeah, that should leave this beer with a little bit of body, some residual sweetness. So we'll see how it goes. It's always kind of a guessing game when it's first time brewing it. So.
Awesome. So we'll give them one last shot, and then we'll give them a little break. Ooh, lots of steam now. Cool. So, yep, we'll go have a little lunch. Great. And you're good.
And right now we're kicking over into the brew kettle. So we're basically transferring from our mash tun and our lauter tun at the same time. So we're basically pulling off 2 tanks, going into our.
Talk like right into this thing. They can't hear it. So
So basically we're transferring from our lauter tun and our mash tun, and going into our brew kettle, collecting all the wort that we need for our final product.
that's it out from over here.
So we got our mash tun that we're just using as a wort receiver right now. So we're pulling out of that, going into the kettle, like Casey said. But we're also coming out of the lauter tun at the same time and pushing them both into the kettle. So once the mash tun is empty, we'll be pulling just from the lauter tun, which is the normal process. And then we will be just into the kettle, which we will begin boiling at that point in time.
And all the water that they see that's raining down in there, that's the sparging process.
That is the sparge water, that's the sparge process. So we're adding that water to go through the filter bed and pull out any excess sugar that we have in there.
Cool. So what are we looking at on the computer, guys? Since we got 3 things going, or 4 with the whirlpool too.
Yeah, so right now we're monitoring our sparge water, which tracking right up there. We're guesstimating probably right around 275 gallons for our sparge. So we're watching that, and we are watching, that's our mash tun there. So that's how many inches we have in the mash tun right now, and it's currently getting transferred out through this pump into the kettle.
So when we're sparging, we're using unsugared water, correct? That's just straight from the liquor tanks?
Yep, yeah.
Is that going to lower our gravity?
Oh yeah, so basically we're diluting right now is what we're doing. So we're going to be getting our last runnings here soon, and you'll see that our gravity on our last runnings will be a lot lower than what they were on first runnings. Yeah, we're adding all that water in. The longer you're sparging, the more water you're adding into the grain bed. You're just diluting it down even more. So the longer you run,
the water's diluting the beer, lowering the gravity, and then we're going to increase the gravity by boiling off some of that water that we use to push through. Right?
Well, it's more of a average. So we take our first runnings, and then we have our last runnings, and we equal out to what we are going to have as our starting gravity for our pre-boil. So we measure it at pre-boil, which is when it's full. So it kind of takes the high and the low, because we're still pulling sugar out, so we're still bringing that in, but you're getting more volume out of it. If we just cut it at a high gravity, then you wouldn't have much volume of beer. So it's the average, and then we'll have a target at the pre-boil that we want, and then that will kind of determine on how hard we need to boil or how soft we need to boil.
so we cut our sparge. Our sparge is cut off. We're continuing to come out of the mash tun and fill up our brew kettle. And while we're coming out of the mash tun, filling the brew kettle, we are still lautering through the lauter tun as well. So we're kind of just monitoring all that, making sure we don't overfill our brew kettle. We don't want to dilute it down too much. So
what happens when you overfill a brew kettle? Or
well,
do we have a safety system, or what are the blow-off valves, or what can happen here?
No, I mean, if we overfill it, the biggest thing is you're gonna over extract out of your mash, and you can start pulling off some really weird off flavors and tannins and whatnot out of the grain there. So that's kind of the biggest thing with overdrawing. I mean, someone's up here working, so as long as they're not like daydreaming or something, it's kind of hard to overfill. It's kind of your job to do it. So
yeah.
In the event that you do overfill, hopefully it's only by a couple inches at the most, and as long as your gravity is close to where it needs to be, you can always just dump some down the drain.
Sweet.
We had a question from Mike asking us that if his pre-boil gravity is low, should he add sugar or do a softer boil? So the answer I would give is it depends how low you are, but I would definitely you would want to have a harder boil because then you're boiling off more water, which increases the gravity. Adding sugar or fermentable sugar is possible, but you're going to have a different mouthfeel at that point. It's going to be a little drier. It's not going to be exactly what you want that way. I mean, are you only looking at my mask at this point?
Nope, it's actually zoomed out on you. Yeah. We're working on the microphone and making sure everybody can hear us. So if you can't hear us at all, we're trying to talk as close into this thing as we can now. So, why do we use the mash tun as a receiver? Why not directly into the boil kettle? Any advantages or disadvantages?
No, so Sheldon had explained that a little earlier that we do go directly into the kettle, but with a 4-vessel system, we already had a beer in here that was in the kettle. So we can start moving it into the mash tun as a wort receiver until the kettle is empty. So the kettle was empty of the Call Me Hazy Tropical, so then we started going into the kettle. And eventually the mash tun will run out, and we will be going from lauter to kettle. So that is the standard. Every brew that we do first of the day will always go that way. This is just allowing us to save time throughout the day because we can start the lautering process before the kettle is empty. Otherwise, we would have to wait till the kettle is empty, and it would be a really, really long period of time before we could do multiple batches.
So basically we have 2 beers going at the same time then on our one
Correct.
system.
Yeah, so on a super busy day, we can actually have up to 3 beers going at one time. We can be mashing one in, boiling another, and knocking one out in the whirlpool. So having a 4-vessel system is really efficient from a time-saving wise versus we would have to, there are combination systems. I worked at a brewery that has a mash lauter tun. So both of these vessels are one, and then they had a wort receiver. So then they would just go into a dedicated holding tank until the kettle was empty. There are some that don't have the opportunity to do so, so they just have to wait till the kettle is empty before they can lauter in, which just puts their mashing time a lot later in the day, and it makes for a much longer day.
So what's the red? What's the orange? Talk about the colors of all the piping.
So basically, all the bright reds are steam. So we have a steam system. The kind of lighter red is hot water. And then our orange is basically just beer lines. So it's all our transfer lines where our wort goes. And then green is our drains. So.
Right. And you don't want to accidentally open up the drain, right?
Well, so all of our valves are pneumatically operated, and if you if you right click on any of the valves, it automatically opens or closes. With the exception of the drains, you actually have to open up a second screen for those valves to open or close them. So it's kind of a safety feature, protects you from opening a drain accidentally.
Cool. Have you taken any readings here, or did we miss anything over the break?
Nope, didn't miss anything. It's basically just a waiting process of the lauter. So first reading will be when we hit our kettle full. We've got about 20 more inches before we'll be kettle full. So we've got 15, 20 minutes or so.
Cool.
So if you look into the lauter tun, I'm not sure with the steam how well you'll be able to see it through the camera, but you'll start to see the water on top of the filter bed, and you can actually start seeing the filter bed itself. So that's just showing that the water is still going through the filter bed, and we're going to use that water until we get to the kettle full. But you're starting to see, now that we ended the sparge, and we're going forward with the process, that you will begin to see the filter bed.
You want to point out the different malts in there based on the color?
I'm not sticking my hand in there, but
yeah, I mean, well, you just say, the darker ones.
The darker ones are kind of the barley, I'm sorry, the roasted barley, and then we have some of the pale ones, which are kind of the two-row, the Munich, and whatnot. And then we also have some chocolate wheat, which is kind of the darker version in there. And then we have some Crystal 60, which is kind of a nice dark amber color. So we have all those malts in there that kind of have the different colors to them.
Now, when they make malts, how are they roasted, or are they grown that color, or what can you tell us about the differences and how they create the variables?
Yeah, so there's a difference between really all the malts, how they make them. The really dark malts are roasted, and depends on the facility. Some of them have big drum roasters, and there's a few other ways, but pretty much malt goes in a giant roaster, and they're from what I've seen at least, a lot of them are actually done manually with the operator just kind of eyeballing. I would imagine it takes years for them to get trained up on knowing when exactly to cut it. The difference between a Crystal 60 and a Crystal 40 could be, 5 minutes of roasting. So it's a pretty skilled profession, I think, from those maltsters hitting all the different roast levels.
What temperature are we heading into the boil kettle at? And when do we start warming up the beer?
It's warming up right now. We're at about 175. So we're at 175 degrees right now. We've got the steam jackets on, so as we transfer, it'll just slowly warm up to our boil temp.
Where's our steam come from?
Steam jacketed, so we've got steam plates at the bottom and then around the outside. And then the big cylinder in the middle, that's our calandria. When we turn that on, it basically just there's steam inside of it, and it makes it boil up through the holes in the top. So that helps circulate the wort, making it more even boil.
There you go.
So with the internal calandria, we have pipes in there, so when the steam happens and the liquid expands due to heat, it'll race up to the top of the pipe and then hit the top and get pushed out, so that we have a good even boil and nothing on the bottom is too burnt. So it's kind of just like a coffee percolator, so it's cycling, so everything's boiled at the same rate and temperature.
So what's our temperature up here that we're all breathing in? It's a little warm.
86.
And about 110% humidity? Yeah. So you want to talk about our new FMB beers? You want to grab those and say hello?
Yeah, you grab them, talk about.
So this is low rise. This is our 100-calorie IPA at 4%. It's the #1 crushed beer by our cellarmen and our brewers and everyone who works here right now. Super light, easy drinking, hop forward, light beer. It's fantastic in my opinion. I drink it more than anything right now. I know Casey was saying he kind of crushes it right now. So available on draft and in 6-packs for us. Here in low rise. And then we got 2 brand new items over here too. This is Lake Time Tea, 120 calorie hard iced tea. It's kind of an unsweetened version. We haven't really seen that in the market before. There's a lot of sweet versions out which just have a ton of sugar and a lot of calories. So we wanted to go the other route, and it's got a nice good black tea taste to it with just a little hint of lemon. So it's a really nice, easy drinking hard tea.
Uncarbonated and filled with nitro.
It is uncarbonated, yep. Then we got our brand new Summer Clear Coast pack, which is releasing from the pub today. We have 3 brand new flavors: strawberry kiwi, orange passion, and pineapple papaya. These have all been super fun to come up with. All really good, refreshing flavors. Really excited to get this out to the people so that they can try them. The Clear Coast white package, our core, is still going to be around, which is the mango guava, watermelon lime, and mixed berry. And this will just be an additional package for it. These are all coming in at 100 calories and 5% as well.
Oh yeah. Oh, you want to talk about your brew tattoos?
Sure. All right. Well, where to start? We'll start at the first one. This is St. Arnold, patron saint of brewers and hop growers. It's off of a stained glass window from a church that he preached in out of Belgium. Then I got the old school, dagger and hop gone through. This is that one. It's an old tapping sign from the 1600s. Basically, it's anytime a brewer had a beer on tap, they'd put out this metal sign. It's the logo for my award-winning brew that I made, Redbeard's Revenge. Then I got the hieroglyphs for beer, and then just traditional old school beer related mermaid in a glass. So.
Nice. All right. We've got how many inches to go now?
We are less than 10 inches.
Less than 10.
We're almost out of here.
Cool. And what are you about to do with the hose?
So I'm just kind of rinsing this out, making sure everything, all that sugar that we collected gets sent over to the kettle.
So are we pulling RO water with this or city water? And is that going to affect the ratio of the salts or anything?
No, so our hot water pulls off hot liquor tank, but our cold water hose that we have up here is just city water.
So right now he is using hot RO water.
Yeah. But the little amount that we use of the city water, it's not going to make a difference in the size batches that we brew.
So out here in Comstock Park, do we have a different water system than Grand Rapids? Is there a preferred?
We do have a different water system. We have the Comstock Park Township water, so we're on our own. But again, it doesn't really matter because everything that we get is coming through our RO system.
I think I whacked out the focus on the camera.
Let me steam on it.
Yeah. There we go.
Yep, so we are about out of the mash tun here, transferring over to the kettle. So we are casing, we're good.
So what are you doing now? You're shutting off the valves?
Yeah. And then just chasing the lines for a hot second here.
So what's chasing the line?
Basically just pushing the wort that's left over in the line to make sure we get every ounce of beer out of the lines that we can.
And for the people that have never brewed before, what is the wort compared to the mash?
Wort is just what you call, basically it's just unfermented beer. So sugar water, it's just, yeah, fancy word.
Yeah. So this is full now?
We still have
Not quite.
3 inches.
Okay.
So we finished pulling out the mash tun, which we are considering the wort receiver right now. And now we're pulling just from the lauter ton, which is the normal way that we always do it.
Still sticking. I thought it was a little less. There it is.
So we are coming up on hitting our 40 inches, which is our target for kettle full. Once we hit 39 inches, so 1 inch to go, we will pull a sample for our last runnings. So we'll be able to see what our gravity was for the last runnings here of the wort, filling the kettle. Big one is checking pH of the runnings. You want to make sure that you stay under 6 pH on those runnings. Anything over 6, you start pulling a lot of off flavors off the grain, tannins and whatnot. So it's kind of an important check for your last runnings. Make sure you're under 6 pH.
So this is moving now. What are you doing here? Shaking it out.
So kettle's full at this point. I just cut the lauter off, and we turned on our plows here, or the rakes. We call those the rakes, and then these white arms that you can see, those are pneumatically operated up and down. Those are the plows. So we have the rake spinning. In the back side of the lauter ton here, there's a slide gate. That slide gate is opening, and there's a chute that drops down into a pump that pumps all this spent grain out into our silo outside. So we are, that's all we're doing right now. We're just get those arms spinning there to break up the bed and get it moving down towards that chute.
Where does all of our spent grain go?
So we have a farmer who comes about every week, and he loads up a truck with the spent grain, and they feed it to cattle.
And is it true that the winter is your favorite time to kick spent grain out of the brewery?
Yeah. So yeah, we had issues last year during the polar vortex. Our pipe that went outside froze multiple times last winter. So luckily this year wasn't too bad, but we also insulated the pipe, and we did a couple other things to make it so it wouldn't freeze. So this year wasn't bad, but last year was not very fun to brew in the winter.
Oh, and here we go. So it's starting to kick out the. Yep. At what point does it start to really pop?
Well, so right now we're only at like 180 degrees, but that is that's just the calandria going to work right now. If you can take that little hat off the top of the calandria, it's just a solid block of steel with a bunch of tubes running through it, and that solid block gets filled with steam. So that wort that's sitting in those tubes is getting heated super quickly right now, and We are kettle full. Usually we won't run the calandria during the boil. We have it on right now to help it get up to temperature. But once we get up to a boil, we're gonna actually turn that calandria off. You can just see all that space there that that's usually full. That's not right now because it's just a 15 barrel batch. So.
Cool. All right, Jay, would you like to say hello?
Hey, buddy.
What's your favorite Perrin beer?
My favorite Perrin beer? Usually the one in my hand, but lately it's been Perrin Black. John's One Rule's been really good lately. We still have some of the beer that Lindsay made that I've been grabbing crowlers of.
Cool. What's your favorite non-Perrin beer?
That's too hard to say.
Yeah.
Depends on my mood.
Yeah.
One that I didn't make is always good.
Lindsay, do you want to talk about your beer that you made for National Women's Day?
Sure. So we came out with the beer for International Women's Day back in April. This is our second time brewing this beer actually, and both times have been a tea-inspired beer. This last one, the theme was a tribute to women, so we dove down the theme of Alice in Wonderland. So it's called Tweedle Tea, and again, it was a tea-inspired beer. We used jasmine green hibiscus green tea. We used I think it was the Kivik yeast strain for that one. Yeah, it was a great beer. Turned out really amazing. I worked very closely with Sheldon, so I give big kudos to all the guys here for letting us jump in and brew with them.
Yeah. Cool. You want to talk about Kivik yeast and the monstrosity that it is?
Monstrosity? It's not monstrosity.
It's
beautiful.
Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, no, Kivik yeast strains, I don't even know if that's how you say it. There's a huge debate on how you say it. So I'm saying Kivik. Correct me if you want. That. But it's a unique Norwegian yeast strain, so it kind of, we ferment it at, they say you ferment it at blood temperature. So we set our fermenters to 98 degrees, and it was almost completely done fermenting after like almost 24 hours. And it just produces some really good kind of juicy tropical fruit characters to it with the esters. So it's just a yeast strain that we've really liked here, so we've done multiple batches. It was the first time we used that on a full scale was our side hustle beer called Kviken It Real. I believe that was released last June, and that was a really good beer that went over really well. So we've done it for some small batch items for the pub here and there, but it's cool strain that we like using here at Perrin.
Cool.
Looks like about 187 degrees.
So the trick is you gotta talk right into this thing like it's a microphone.
Right into there? Okay, we're going to close this for a minute. Speed our boil up a little bit.
And what beer did you bring up here, or beer in the process?
So this is the last step in a brewing process for us, at least. This is the sample off the tank that I just took off of the hazy that was just made. We're going to get a pH reading and a gravity reading so we know where we start. And then I want to take it to a lab and count all those yeasts that are floating around in there, getting ready to do their job to make sure that we have enough in there.
Cool.
Right now, I'm waiting on this one to cool down a little bit. How are you looking in there?
So tell everybody what you're thinking, and while you're thinking
Okay,
it, what you're doing.
So we've got all the liquid we need out of here. Now we got to get rid of all that grain. We're going to open up what we call a stator hole. We've got an auger underneath this tank here in our lauter tub. I will auger it all out to a silo outside. And we have a dairy farmer that's come and pick up all that grain and feed it to the dairy cattle. So it's kind of like cycle of life.
And Casey is done for the day?
Yep, Casey was in at 4:30 this morning to get started, so I've been here all day kind of working in the background, getting us ready for tomorrow and next week.
How many beers are we spinning up tomorrow?
We've got 2 more hazy tomorrow.
Cool.
We got the first one started today, and we'll finish it off tomorrow. Then we will clean the entire brew house, top to bottom, inside and out, and pack it up for the weekend and start all over on Monday.
Sweet.
Okay, let's see here. Where's our temperature? I'm still a little warm. Yeah, just a little bit there, folks. I just got to get a gravity reading. Oh, yeah.
So, Connor, what are you about to do?
I'm about to spray out the remaining trub from the previous batch of hazy. So this is the whirlpool that we were talking about, how it has a raised platform and kind of a moat next to it. So all the trub should be sitting up on top, and so that we can pull clean beer without all these solid particles in it. So now I'm just rinsing it so it can go. We can empty it out so that we're ready for this next Russian Imperial that we got coming in.
Jay's going to take the reading here.
I'll rinse this one out. Okay, let's get our gravity sample here. Oh, let's see. Where was our goal for that?
You're on the big one.
The big one? Okay.
It'll probably be right on the edge of the 2.
Ooh. Looking pretty good there. 19.5 maybe. Here, I'm gonna do a little brewer secret here. Oh, let's see. 19.5 plus 1, so we got 19.6 in the tank.
That's the hazy,
That is a hazy, so 19.6 Plato we're starting at.
which is going to put us about where on the ABV after it ferments?
Whoa! What's that? You think? I don't know. Hazy are usually at 8, so 8.5 range. Is that what we're
Easy.
or 7.5 range?
Yeah, I think it's 7.5.
7.5. Yeah, so we 7.5, 7.75. Yeah. That's 3. Yeah.
And that's Chris over there, one of our cellarmen, cleaning out the tanks so that we could kick these beers over into them for fermentation. That's great. All right. And what are you doing?
So Chris is working on that tank over there. And he needed the glycol turned off. So I have the controls up here. I can turn off the glycol system.
What's glycol?
Glycol is a antifreeze that goes in the walls of these fermenters. Actually helps us keep the temperature we want. It's basically like a giant refrigeration system that we have tied in all these tanks.
Sweet.
So when the last stage of fermentation is we drop the temperature to kind of put the yeast to sleep. It'll fall out of solution. We can pull the yeast off the bottom, send the beer on its way, and then when it's all said and done, we can clean the tank up. We turn the glycol off, natural temperature raises, and then we can just clean it from there.
Sweet.
Okay, we've got our readings here.
All right, we got a question from one of the viewers. When taking final gravity readings, is it true that you need to dissolve the natural CO2 by pouring it cup to cup? I've heard that CO2 can affect gravity readings.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you are getting some CO2 pickup or some gases in your beer when you're taking it, absolutely degas it. Usually on a second day brew, we will get a lot of CO2 buildup. This one you do see a little bit, but it really didn't. It pushed out most of it once I took the reading. You let it set for a good 5 minutes, it's going to push out some of it. What it's going to do, it's going to raise that hydrometer up artificially. So this was our other sample. Get the reading on that. Okay. Hey Sheldon, I'm gonna go grab the suck on this.
Do we not have the little meter thing up here anymore?
Hydrometer?
Yeah.
No, because we can use it, but once there's alcohol in it, the tank, it doesn't work as well.
Okay.
These are more accurate.
Cool. So that's our pH right there. Is that the target?
Yeah, that's pH.
Talking to that.
Yeah, so that right there is our pH meter reading our sample here. This is the meter itself.
Are we within range?
Yeah, it's looking good. We're looks like it's still stabilizing, but I'm guessing that's our pre-boil sample.
Yep. Why do we not use refractometers?
We can. We have a refractometer as a backup. Hydrometers are a little more accurate. We did have a digital refractometer too, which we used every time, but that recently broke. So we're currently using just hydrometers. Here's our backup refractometer right here, which when you look through there, it's not very accurate.
Do you think we could try to get the camera in it? Do you think it would see it if we put enough light to it? You got the.
We'll try.
There you go. There we go. No, yeah, let's put some beer in there and see if we can see it.
There it is.
Yeah, cool. Let's refract the beer.
See one? Let's see if I can.
Like that. Do you have a flashlight on you?
I got my phone.
Okay. We're in it. There you go. So what am I looking at here?
So there is the manual refractometer. So you can see where the line is, where it's blue. Where the blue starts and ends there. That's what your reading is. And it's.
Oh shit! Oops,
Run! Unplug.
Oh.
Unplug.
How much did we lose?
We'll see here in a minute.
All right.
Not very much.
We back live?
Yeah.
Cool. So, yeah.
We're on?
Yeah, we're on.
Yeah, so we just had a little boil over. So that's what's nice about the calandria is that rolling action with the calandria. It really knocks down the foam during the boil. So
Yeah.
when we're boiling with just the side jackets, we don't really get that protection from the calandria. So looks like we lost about maybe half an inch or so off there. So not very bad at all.
Cool. So even professional brewers can have it happen to them too.
So yeah, I got to go get the steam back on.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, our steam's back on.
Yeah.
So our steam is back on.
How often does that happen, would you say? That's a pretty rare event, right?
Yeah, we haven't had a boil over, even a small one, in probably over a year. So yeah, that's
That's the fun of live brewing, right?
yeah. We do have a silicone defoamer that we usually add a little bit into. I'll have to ask Casey if he hasn't left for the day yet, if he threw that in or not. We usually add that in right at the beginning of boil. You can see now in the water ton where we're draining out.
Oh, the hole.
The hole back there. So yeah, the arms that are spinning there are kind of just pushing all that grain right towards that hole. And that hole leads, there's a chute off that hole that leads to a pump that's pumping it outside.
Cool. All right.
So I'm going to assume that no one put defoamer in, so I'm just going to put a little splash in. Really scientific measurement here.
So are we going to add any hops to the boil or anything else?
Yeah, so it's a 90-minute boil. Right now we're about 10 minutes into that boil. So our first hop strike will be at 60 minutes. A lot of you homebrewers probably only do 60-minute boils to begin with, so your first strike will be right at the beginning of boil. We do that 30 minutes of pre-boil time.
And we count backwards with hop additions, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So a 60-minute addition means you're adding it when there's 60 minutes left to boil still.
Okay. And then what are the different timing of the hops do for flavor profile versus bitterness, and how do we play with that?
All right, so the longer a hop is being boiled, the more those oils and the hops are being converted into what you'll perceive as bitterness. So hops that go in the beginning of a boil are what's going to increase your bitterness, your IBUs. Any hops that go in more towards the end of boil or whirlpool are they're not getting that isomerization of the oils, so that's all going to be aroma, aromatics. So it's writing recipes, you're just kind of balancing out what time hops are going in, if they're bittering, if they're aromatic hops, and trying to piece together how you want those all to come across in the beer.
Cool. Have we measured out our hops yet for this?
I do not believe we have.
All right, so are we cool to leave this for a second?
It looks like they did, actually.
Oh, they did? Okay.
Yeah.
We should go talk about those. You want to go down there? All right.
Yeah.
Brewer. Where's
Follow Jay to the lab real quick. Let's see this one.
All right, so we have this beer. Obviously, we're not going for really any hop profile in it at all. Just a little bit of a IBU kick to kind of balance out the sweetness. So we have our first and second additions in these buckets here. It's all nugget. And then we have in here a little bit of kettle fining and yeast nutrient.
What does all that do?
So the yeast nutrient is just yeast food. It's got most of your nutrients come from the grain, but the yeast nutrient just adds a little bit more of what it needs to really thrive in the fermenter. And then the kettle fining, it just helps. It it helps filter out a lot of those proteins that get formed in the boil. It's really kind of like your first clarifying agent, getting out all that unwanted haze and whatnot from the beer.
And we're gonna go say hello to Jay in the lab. That's cool. All right.
Okay, hello again. So, after taking our readings up top with our hydrometers, we've got a few digital pieces of equipment we can use. We can take our pH, a little bit more accurate pH meter here, which we're looking about the same as we had up top.
And this is the Call Me Hazy again.
This is the Call Me Hazy again. This is the last stage we do before we hand it off to the cellarman. The cellar will start taking over from here and monitoring the temperature throughout the week.
Cool. Can you explain what some of this equipment is and look at all these science projects we have going on? So,
my knowledge is a little bit limited, but I do work in here a little bit with Chad. We've got our hood for taking micro samples, trying to check to see if there's any bacteria growing or anything in other samples. We keep track of yeast. We can keep track of our pHs on our. We can take our gravity readings. We have a microscope, so we can yeast counts, yeast viability. We have an alkalizer, so we can analyze how much alcohol is in the final product.
cool.
And Chad's main job is to keep track of all that and use all that data to keep our quality in line.
Cool. It's a dirty job, huh?
Yeah. 90% of being a brewer is just cleaning. Cleaning and sanitizing. So that's definitely settled out by now. The 543. And then we are going to use our hydrometer to measure our gravity. Looks like I grabbed the wrong one. Twice in a row.
So what do all the different ones mean?
They just measure different ranges.
Okay.
So they go from 0 to 8, 8 to 16, and then 16 to 24.
And No Rules is up at 24, right?
Yeah, so no rules. We target 25 coming off the brew house. like that sample must have been our last runnings. So last runnings, we got a 10.7, and then these are temperature corrected. Looks like we're +2, so we got a 10.9. $10.9 for our last runnings. And with the excitement we had a few minutes ago, we usually grab our pre-boil sample. We'll give it like 5 to 10 minutes to boil, make sure all the runnings are nice and mixed up, make sure there's no stratification at all in the kettle. So all right, so that's our pre-boil sample cooling. We'll get a reading on that in a couple minutes. And we're about 10 minutes away from our first edition. We've been boiling for about 20 minutes now. We got our lauter ton is probably getting pretty close to being done graining out.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that last little bit will help it get out with the hose. And end of the day, we just kind of rinse everything out. The heat exchanger off the Whirlpool gets CIP'd every day.
And what does CIP stand for?
That's cleaning in place. So just the full like chemical cleaning. The heat exchanger gets it every day. Everything else gets it once a week.
What do we use for our cleaning chemicals? Or what do you recommend for homebrewers too?
So we use caustic, and if it's really heavy buildup, we'll use hydrogen peroxide booster with our caustic. And then
At home though, they don't like to mix together.
yeah,
You want to say that again?
Don't use those two together at home. They don't like to mix together. It'll create an exothermic reaction, and you'll have a bad day.
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, when we add that second chemical there, it's always once the caustic's been added into the water, you never add the two chemicals directly to each other. And then we also run nitric phosphoric acid probably every 2 to 3 weeks in all the vessels as well.
Is there any benefits to cleaning with a base caustic solution versus the acid?
Well, the caustic is what is actually going to break down all the more like it breaks down more of the solids and the sediment and the more organic material. And really the acid is more to help condition the metal, make sure everything's staying nice and polished and clean, protects against rust and whatnot.
Nice. Right. Okay. Wait, there's two. Which one do you want? So we had the big hops first or the little box of hops?
So our first edition is actually a higher weight than the second edition. So we're adding 10 pounds in at the 60-minute, and then 5 pounds in at, 15 minutes.
And what kind of IBUs are we looking for, and why do stouts traditionally have such a high IBU?
Well, I'd have to look back at the recipe to see. I believe we were targeting around 60 IBUs, if I recall correctly. And that's not going to be perceived like a 60 IBU IPA. The stout is going to have so much residual sweetness and the body and everything that that's really just to help balance it out, so it's not overly sweet. So yeah, that's pretty much it for stouts.
How long has everybody been at Perrin?
I have been here since almost 5 years. This summer will be 5 years.
Almost OG.
I've been here 4 years.
I've been here 5 years, almost a month. 5 years.
I have been here 2 years, May 14th.
There you go, coming up.
It just came up.
I've been here almost 3 years, like 2.5-ish. It's closing out.
Just hosing out.
Yeah, the temperature's all down now, right? Just cleaning everything, right?
Most of our job is cleaning.
Yeah.
Yeah, cleaning it.
Negative oil. Lightsaber.
Like this.
Yeah.
You're still keeping the light back on?
It smells amazing.
Yeah.
Got nice roasty coffee notes in there already.
That's the best part.
Yeah.
Ah. We already didn't put any chocolate in it, and you can smell like dark chocolate.
So did any of the wives complain about what you guys smell like when you go home? Always fresh baked bread?
My wife used to. She loves the beer as much as I do, so she loves the smell now.
Oh, can we talk again on the yeast products that we prefer? They didn't hear it very well.
Yeast.
Yeah, yeast.
All right, so our we use Y yeast American 1056 is our house yeast. We use that in almost every beer. We use some other strains for some of our specialty one-offs, but that 1056 we use in virtually everything. We've used a couple of the Kivix from Omega. Sorry, I'm sure I'm going to get corrected on how to pronounce that by 20 people, but we also used one of the Kivik dry packets from Lalamond. What else? We use White Labs. We also use a smaller company out of, I believe, Colorado. They're called Inland Island, I believe is their name. We use them every once in a while for some of our one-off yeasts. So kind of all over the board, but for the most part, I would say 95% of everything we brew is just with our house strain.
Cool.
Are you all from Grand Rapids? I'm from Grand Rapids. I was born and raised here.
Yep, he's a lifer.
I was originally from Mayville, Michigan, over in the thumb.
Yeah.
I'm an import.
Yeah, I'm from Marne. If anyone's ever heard of Marne, it's northwest of the city, about 15 minutes.
And I'm from Bay City, Michigan. So east side, turn west side.
I'm from Seattle, Washington. Who gets to throw it in?
Yeah, we got our 60-minute strike here. 10 pounds of nugget.
Why are the hops in little pellets like that? Why don't they look like Casey's tattoo?
Well, they pelletize them for a lot of reasons. Big ones, storage and transfer. Yeah, it helps brewers out. If it was all whole leaf hops, they wouldn't dissolve. We would just have pounds and pounds and pounds of whole cones in our kettle right now that we'd have to find a way to get out. So pelletizing it like this, it dissolves into the solution, and you get a lot better flavor extraction and everything from it.
For the home brewers, any a good substitution for nugget hops would be either Chinook or Columbus hop. Very similar earthy tones to them. Very suited for stouts and dark beers.
What are we watching? What are we watching for here as the hops went in? Is it going to boil or what's going to happen?
The hops are going to start to break up, move throughout the beer, start to blend in there a little bit, add all that nice hoppy flavor along with the rest. Get that out.
Yeah, we will because we got to restart the thing. So I'll cut it over to you and say, hey, thank you for watching so far. We have to relaunch our stream. We'll be up in another 45 minutes. Cool. All right, ready?
So now that we're in the boil kettle and we're boiling, we do this for another hour. So we're actually going to cut our stream. Thank you for watching. We will be posting another one for when we kick back up in about 45 minutes. We just need to start a new one for our streaming. It won't let us go over 4 hours. So in about 45 minutes, please check for another link, and we'll be right back here to show you the rest of the brew.